Hey gang, welcome to the Silver River Art Studio where we create beauty where none existed. Today I'm going to teach you how to make this gorgeous crocheted snowflake, even if you've never crocheted before in your life. On the other hand, if you are an experienced crocheter, you can use the timestamps in the information box below and skip ahead to where we actually start making the snowflake. I also have a PDF of the pattern directions on my website at www.silverriverarts.com. In this video, I also have some great tips and tricks for following YouTube instructions that will be a huge help to you whether you're learning to crochet or starting yoga or maybe following a recipe. So stay tuned for those as well. Most introductory crochet patterns are really basic and really boring. You usually wind up making a pot holder or a scarf where all you do is go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth doing the same stitch every time, and by the time you're done, you never want to see another crochet hook again in your life. Not here. I've specifically designed this snowflake pattern so that you can progress from the simpler stitches up to the more interesting ones as we work our way around the snowflake. You'll also see how the different stitches work together to create something really beautiful. Honest, you can do this even if you can't tell one end of the crochet hook from the other. My mom and I started making these snowflakes years ago, and by now we have enough to decorate an entire tree. One of the reasons that I like making these snowflakes is they make a great small personalized gift, or you can use them to decorate a package or tuck them in a Christmas card. They're nice if you want to give someone a gift for Christmas or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa. After all, snowflakes are universal. But you don't want them to feel obligated to give you something in return. They're also great to have on hand for those occasions when someone brings you a gift or a plate of cookies and you don't have anything for them. Oops. I used to tuck them into Christmas cards for special coworkers, and I used to make a different snowflake for every person because every snowflake is different, right? The problem was that the next year I couldn't remember which snowflake I'd made for whom. So a couple of years ago, I decided to do an annual snowflake so that I could be sure to give a different snowflake every year. So welcome to the annual snowflake for 2023. First, let's talk about the materials that you're going to need. The word crochet is from the French word for hook. So obviously, the first thing you need to start with is the hook. So if you're totally new to crochet and you can't tell one end of the hook from the other, this is the hook end, this is the butt end. Now you got it. You're ready to go. Okay, maybe it's not quite that easy, but it's close. Crochet hooks come in many different sizes and are made of many different materials. Metal, plastic, and bamboo are the most common. Each of them is designed to be used with a different thickness of yarn. Here you can see 3 snowflakes that I've made using this very pattern, but with different thicknesses of yarn and different sizes of crochet hook. Regardless of what size you use, the result will be the same. It'll just change the size of the snowflake. You could even make it with sewing thread if you wanted to. Personally, I prize my sanity and my eyesight too much to try it, but you could. The other thing you'll need to crochet, besides the hook, is obviously yarn. For this project, you really need to use a cotton yarn. That's because you'll need something that will really absorb the sugar water when we go to stiffen our snowflake. When we get to that point, you'll also need a needle with an eye large enough to accommodate your crochet thread and a pair of scissors. To stiffen your snowflake, you'll need boiling water, sugar, a small bowl, a fork or a small whisk, and some straight pins. Make sure that the pins are stainless steel or nickel-coated steel because you don't want any rust marks on your new snowflake. You'll also need a piece of waxed paper and a piece of cardboard or a cardboard box. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, it's just to pin your snowflake into whilst it dries. Back to the basics. Crochet yarn, also often called crochet thread, is widely available in many different thicknesses or weights. I provided some links in the description box below, but you can generally find it at places like Walmart or craft stores. You can also find the crochet hooks there. For this project, I would recommend using a medium weight cotton crochet thread such as Red Heart Classic 10 or Aunt Lydia's Classic 10. 10 is an indication of the yarn weight. That will give you a snowflake about 6 inches or 15 centimeters across, like the middle-sized one here. You can see that they're all the same pattern. It is only the size of the yarn and the hook that change. If you feel more comfortable starting off with a bigger hook and a larger gauge yarn, that's just fine. Whatever you are comfortable with. In that case, you might choose a Fashion 3 yarn, Red Heart or Aunt Lydia's. I actually like using larger ornaments on the bottom of my tree and smaller ones as I go up. So you could even make 2 sizes, or 3, if you really get hooked on crochet. The size of your crochet thread dictates the size of your crochet hook, but you don't have to guess. On the side of almost every ball of yarn there is a little symbol which shows the weight of the yarn, the size of the crochet hook, and the size of the knitting needles that are recommended to be used with that weight of yarn. This label recommends that you use a 1.5 millimeter hook, or a US size 7, which is a good size for the size 10 yarns. If you choose the Fashion 3 weight yarn, you'll need a 3.25 millimeter or a 3.5 millimeter hook. That's a US D/3 or E/4 size, which will give you the largest snowflake here, about 7.5 inches or 19 centimeters across. Because life just isn't complicated enough already, crochet hook sizes are given in 3 different systems. The first is the metric system, which is used pretty much everywhere except the United States. That gives the diameter of the hook in millimeters. This hook is 5 millimeters. To make up for that universality, the US has 2 different systems, a number or a letter. Sometimes you'll see both a letter and a number on the same hook, or even all 3. Crochet hooks also come in different materials. The really tiny hooks are usually steel. When you get into slightly larger hooks, you can use either metal, plastic, or bamboo. It's pretty much up to you. Some people really like the feel of a bamboo hook. I generally prefer a metal hook until you get to the really big sizes when it would just be too heavy. This is my favorite hook. I've had it since I was a kid, and as you can see, the color on the metal is starting to wear off some. It only cost 55 cents. That's how old I am. It's a good size for just standard yarn. In fact, it's going to be the one that I use today, so it'll make it easier to see what I'm doing. It's made by the Boy Company, which makes a lot of the crochet hooks out there. I find I like theirs the best. I provided links in the description box below. There are a couple of things that I look for in a crochet hook. Is the hook smooth? This is not an issue with metal hooks, but sometimes with plastic hooks, you'll see a ridge that runs down along the side. You don't want that. That's just going to irritate your hands. 2 other things to look for are the shape of the tip and the shape of the grip. You want one that comes to a little bit of a point at the tip. Some are more flat or blunt. This tip just makes it easier when you need to sneak it in between the threads in order to make your stitch. This isn't as much of a deal with these little metal hooks like we'll use for the snowflake, but it's a consideration if you're looking at going on and doing more crochet in the future, as I hope you will, because I hope you'll get hooked. I find the most comfortable hooks have a kind of oblong grip in the middle. There are some that have a more rectangular grip, and I find that over time they're just not as comfortable to use. But that's kind of a nitpicky personal preference. You will want to do this project with cotton yarn. Today, I'm going to use this acrylic yarn and a larger hook just to make it easier for you to follow. I'm right-handed, but if you're a lefty, here's a special YouTube trick just for you. If you want to flip a YouTube video to a mirror image, navigate to the video you want to watch, like this one, then go up to the address bar in the top left corner, and you'll see the URL for the video. Click on the address once to highlight it, and it will turn blue. Click again, and it will give you the full address with the https:// etc. Delete YouTube from the address, not youtube.com, just YouTube, and replace it with mirror the video, all one word, and hit enter. In a moment, the video will appear in mirror image. That means everything is in mirror image. So if you follow the directions below to adjust the speed, you'll have to do that in reverse too. At the beginning, I promised you some tips to make YouTube easier to use for following instructions, including for this video. So here they are. If you're following a video and the instructions are going too fast or too slow, it's really easy to speed them up or slow them down. You can even change the speed at different times in the same video. The first step is to go down to the settings gear in the bottom right-hand corner of your YouTube screen. Click on that and then click on playback speed in the menu. It will give you a number of speed options to go faster or slower. You can also click custom in the upper right corner, and then you can use the slider to pick your own speed. And without further ado, let's get started. The first thing you want to do is make sure that your hands are clean. You don't want any lotion or anything like that on them that might potentially stick to your yarn. This is particularly important with this fine, very white cotton yarn. We have our yarn here, and you want to give yourself a tail. That gives you a little bit of something to hang on to, so you can be generous with that tail. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take our yarn and we're going to make a regular slip knot. So we're going to go around the finger and then just through like that. Okay, I'll do that again. Around, through. And then we're going to put that onto our hook. We want to keep this about the right tension. So I find that this part of the shaft is really a good place to judge how tight it should be. If it's too tight, you're going to be fighting to try and get it through. Just gentle, gentle tension. Now, what am I doing with this hand? You want to control the yarn with this finger. Now the problem is that if you do that for too long, your finger's going to get tired. It's going to cramp up. So we'll create a little extra tension. With this weight of yarn, I do it like this. You can see what I'm doing here. For smaller yarn like you'll be using for the Snowflake, I'll go around and over and under. You can see that here. That creates a little more tension. How you do it is totally up to you. Depends on what you're comfortable doing. It's not a science, and as I say, it will vary with the size of the yarn. Now we're going to do what's called a chain stitch. A chain stitch is the basic stitch in crochet. Everything builds on the chain stitch. So we're going to reach out and we're going to pull through the yarn. And that is one chain stitch. Again, reach out, pull through. Reach out, pull through. Reach out, pull through. As I said, this is the basic stitch in crochet, so it's something you want to get fairly consistent. So you can keep doing these chain stitches all about the same size. Now you can see here how consistent those stitches are. So you just want to keep doing that until you have the right tension. You don't want to make them too tight. If you do it too tight and small, you're really going to have trouble getting your hook through that later to make another stitch. On the other hand, if you make it too loose, then you're going to wind up with kind of an undefined mess. So you can see along here, you can see where my normal tension changes. As you can see where it's too tight, and that's where it's too loose. If you've never crocheted before, this is a really good time to just practice doing a whole bunch of chain stitches. That gives you a chance to figure out how you are comfortable holding the thread with the other hand and to generate the tension that you want. Just keep going until you look back and your tension looks pretty good. Okay, I think we're good. Just keep going until you're comfortable. We only want 6 stitches for our snowflakes, so I'm just going to pull them out back to the beginning. The joy of crochet is that if you don't like what you did, you can just pull it out and go back and do it again. So, here we are. We're back to our beginning. Now the chain stitch. When you see it in a pattern, it will be abbreviated CH. So we need 6 chain stitches here. Now what we're going to do is called a slip stitch. And I'm going to slip the tip of this crochet hook right in there at the beginning, that very first chain that we made. You can see why having a slightly pointier tip really helps for this. Now I'm going to reach out, I'm going to pull that through the chain, and I'm going to pull it through the loop as well. Okay? I'm going to do that again so that you can see it again. So reach out, pull through the chain, and pull through the loop. Okay? So now we've got our circle. So that's a slip stitch. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do 6 more chains. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now we're going to do another slip stitch, but it's going to be a little bit different because instead of going into the stitch, we're going to go through the hole in the center. So right through that hole there. So reach through the hole, pull around, and pull through. And remember, if I'm going too fast for you, you can always use those YouTube tips I gave you and adjust the speed. I'm actually going to repeat this chain 6 slip stitch in the center 5 more times. So you can just follow along with the next 5 too. A word to the wise. Make sure when you go to do the slip stitch that you're doing it in the center of the circle, not in one of the loops. Been there, done that, ripped it out and redid it. When you see a repeat like this written in crochet instructions, if there's something that you need to repeat several times, instead of writing chain 6 slip stitch in center 6 times, you will see the repeated sequence with an asterisk at either end, followed by the number of times you have to repeat it. So, here that would look like asterisk, chain 6, slip stitch in the center, asterisk 6 times. Now things get a little crowded in the center there, that's fine. Just scoot everybody over and keep working. That's another reason you don't want your stitches too tight. Now you have your 6 loops or petals. Congratulations! That's your first row of crochet. And yes, it's still called a row even though it's round. Those 6 loops are going to become the 6 points of your snowflake. Now to do this next row, we're going to have to be a little bit sneaky. And the reason we need to be sneaky is that we actually want to start working in the first loop, not in the center of our snowflake. The next couple of steps may seem a little confusing, but hang in there. Just follow the instructions and it'll make sense in a minute. So we're going to put our crochet hook through that first petal, and then we're going to pull it through. So now we've got one slip stitch in our petal. You can see how it's coming out of the petal instead of out of the center. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do one chain stitch. You'll understand the reason for that in a minute. Now we're going to do what is called a single crochet. And so what we're going to do is we'll take our hook, we're going to reach through that loop, we'll pull the yarn through like we normally do, but we're going to leave that loop on that hook instead of pulling it through like we usually do. Now we're going to reach out again and pull through both loops. Okay, I'm going to do that again more slowly so you can see it. Reach through, pull up the yarn, 2 loops on the hook, and then instead of pulling through, you reach out and you grab that yarn again with those 2 loops on the hook and you pull it through both loops. And so that is your single crochet. Now we're going to do another one. Reach out, pull through, and pull through both loops. Okay, now you're starting to see the architecture here of these stitches a little bit. You can see that they're a little bit higher than the slip stitch that we did. And so there's that single crochet that we did at the beginning. And what that does is that kind of raises the level of our yarn up to the same height as the slip stitch, so you don't wind up with this little slope. When you see single crochet written in instructions, it will be abbreviated SC. Now, if all that was a little confusing, now we're going to do 3 more chain stitches, just like we did at the beginning. Super easy. Okay, now we're going to do another single crochet in that petal. We're forming what's called a picot. So through, 2 loops on the hook, pull through again. Okay, let's look back and see what we've got. At the beginning, we've got that chain 1 that's kind of cheating to get to the right height for the single crochets. Then we got 2 single crochets, our 3 chains that make a picot, and then we've got another single crochet. So we're going to do 2 more single crochets. So reach through the loop, pull up, 2 loops on the hook, and pull through again. Okay, so what have we got? We've got our 3 single crochets on one side, and then we've got 2 single crochets plus this cheater over here on the other side, and we've got the picot in the middle. So now we're going to move on to the next loop, and we're going to do 3 single crochets. Remember how at the beginning of the last one we did a slip stitch and then that cheater chain stitch? We're not going to do that here. We're just doing a straight single crochet. Trust me on this one, it'll work. Okay, and reach through again and pull again. Reach through, 2 on the hook, and pull through again. Now, we're coming to those 3 chains for the picot again. So 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to do 3 more single crochets. I realize it may be insanely boring to sit here and watch me crochet, but I'm assuming that you're a beginner, and so I'm pacing this for you. then reach through, pull it up, and there's our third single crochet. So now we have our loops. We've got our 3 single crochets, our picot, and then 3 single crochets. Now the word picot is from the French, just like the word crochet, and it means a point. It actually is related to the word pike, as in medieval weapon. So that's a picot. So now we're going to move on to our next loop. Do the same thing. So we're going to do 3 single crochets. And then we're going to do our picot. And 3 more single crochets. Now remember I mentioned at the beginning that when you have a repeat of the same instructions, you're going to see an asterisk. And so in this case, what you would see is you would see asterisk 3SC in next loop, CH3, 3SC in same loop, asterisk 5 times. And now over into the next petal. And a picot. And into our last petal or loop. I'm going a little faster for you here now. You're getting the hang of it. And we're going to do 1 more single crochet and our last picot. And 3 more single crochets. And there you go. Congratulations. You have finished your second row of crochet, and it's actually starting to look like a snowflake. So in this next row, we're going to have to be a little bit sneaky. Remember how we were sneaky and we put a slip stitch in this loop so that we could work in it? Now what we want to do is we want to do slip stitches so we can work in this picot up here. So we're going to be sneaky. We're going to come along here and we're going to put slip stitches along the top of this row. Because what we want to do is we want that to be quite flat. Because what we're going to do now is we're going to jump from picot to picot. Now we could use a single crochet, but that would make it quite thicker. So what we're going to do is in that first chain 1 that we did, slip that crochet hook in so it's under both threads that are lying across the top there, and do a slip stitch. So same thing here, under both threads that lie across the top, grab it and pull it through for a slip stitch. And see, that's much flatter than it would have been if you had done a single crochet. So now on this last one, underneath the two, pull all the way through. And you can see that it really doesn't look that much taller than the other side. Now we're going to do one more sneaky slip stitch to get into this picot so that we can start working in this picot. And now we're going to learn another stitch. It's called the double crochet. And next to the chain stitch, this is probably the one that you'll wind up using the most. And so now the double crochet is slightly higher than the single crochet. So whereas we did the one chain stitch to make up for the height, and on the single crochet we're going to do two to make up for the height of the double crochet. So let's go back and look at what we've got. We've got our 3 sneaky slip stitches to get up to the picot, and then 1 to get into the picot. And then we've got our 2 chain stitches to get to the height of a double crochet. So now we're going to learn the double crochet. After the chain stitch, you'll probably use it the most. You want to reach out and wrap the yarn around the hook before you put it through the picot. So you have 2 loops of yarn on your hook. 2 loops, double crochet. Now we're going to reach through the picot like we did before and pull a loop up. Now reach out again, grab the yarn, and you want to pull it through the first 2 loops. Not all 3. So pull through 2, and you've still got 2 on the hook, and then you pull through again. Okay, we're going to do that again. So around the hook, you've got 2 stitches on there now. Reach through the picot, pull a loop up, and then you want to pull that yarn through 2 and then through 2 again. So 2 and 2, double crochet. And again, around, through, pull the loop up, pull through 2, pull through 2. Okay, so now we've got our cheater, and then we've got 3 double crochets. And so that makes 4. We want 6. So 2 more double crochets. Through, pull through 2, pull through 2. And 1 more. So around, pull up that loop, pull through 2, pull through 2. Okay, that's our 6. Now we want to do a chain 3 to jump over to this picot over here. So just 3 chain stitches to bridge that gap. Now when you do this first double crochet in this next picot, it's a little hard. Sometimes that wants to slip off the hook. So pull through 2, pull through 2. Just make sure you don't lose that first loop off the hook as you go through that picot. So we've got our chain 3, our first double crochet, and so we want 5 more double crochets. So around, through, pull through 2, and pull through 2. So there's 4, so we need 2 more. Okay, now we need our bridge of 3. Now these 3 stitches are not called a picot. And that's because, remember, picot means a point, and these are actually just kind of making a space, not a point. So that's why those three are not a picot, but the one that we're working in right now, those three from the previous row, are picots. Now this first could be a little bit fiddly, so just make sure that that loop that you make before you go through the picot doesn't slide off. If it does, just pull it out and start again. I'm speeding up a bit here, but remember you can always pause or adjust the speed so you're comfortable. Another bit of crochet trivia, picots don't have to be 3 stitches. They can be 5 or 7 or whatever. I'm speeding up a bit here, but remember, you can always pause or adjust the speed so you're comfortable. We're almost done with this row, so we're going to do 3 chain stitches, and then we're going to do a slip stitch in that second chain of that chain 2 that we did at the beginning of the row. So here in that second chain of that chain 2, we're going to slip in there, and we're going to do a slip stitch, and that will complete your 3rd row. It's actually starting to look like something, though maybe more of a flower than a snowflake. So let's rectify that. We're going to do 26 chain stitches now. I'll speed up a bit. I think you got the hang of this by now. Now we want to do a double crochet in the next space where we chained 3, but it wasn't a picot. But we are going to make a picot now. So we're going to do 3 double crochets, and then we're going to do 3 chains to make it picot, and then 3 more double crochets in that same space. Okay, now we want to chain 24. Remember, our first chain was 26, but that's because we were making 2 extras to make up for the height of the double crochet. When you go to attach the chain 24 in the next space, you want to make sure that that chain isn't twisted. So go back and have a look now. Better to find it now than later. I'm going to speed us up now, and I will come back when we have finished that last chain 24 that will give us our 6th point in our snowflake. And if you need to pause the video, feel free to do so in order to have time to catch up. And we'll see you once we get to that point. Okay, we're in our last space. So we're going to do 3 double crochets and 3 chains for a picot like we did before, but we're only going to do 2 double crochets in the last section. That's because we're going to hook up with that extra 2 chains we did when we did chain 26 at the beginning. So we're going to take our chain 26 and we're going to do a slip stitch in the second chain to finish it off. That gives us our 3 double crochets on one side of the picot and 2 double crochets plus a cheater on the other side. And that's it. Whenever you set your work down, it's a good idea to pull out a big loop like this. I've gotten to the point that I just do it automatically. That way, even if your stitch falls off the hook, it's going to take a long time for that to pull out enough to start unraveling. Disclaimer, I make no guarantees if the cat grabs your project and runs off with it. When you come to the end of your project, you can just cut off the yarn. Remember to leave a tail so it won't unravel on you. And then do a slip stitch, but pull the tail of the thread all the way through the stitch and pull it snug but not tight. Admittedly, this doesn't look like much right now, and nor for that matter does this one. But we're going to rectify that, and we'll start by sewing in the ends. I find that the best needles for this are tapestry needles. They have a much larger eye, and that makes them much, much easier to thread. So if you're like me, and you prefer to save your sanity and your vision, these are the needles for you. I'm just going to feed this back through part of the center, about halfway round the center of our snowflake. And that should be enough to prevent that thread from unraveling. So just pull it through and clip it off. Tapestry needles can also be used for other kinds of sewing, and they're so much easier to work with. I'm just going to slide this back underneath again through that first chain and down in. Again, it doesn't have to be very long. We're just trying to prevent it from unraveling. So we'll pull it through and we'll clip that one off as well. Okay, let's get started on the next step. So first we're going to need our snowflake. We're going to need a small dish. We're going to need sugar. We're going to need a piece of wax paper. We're going to need a piece of cardboard. We're going to need some pins. We're going to need a whisk. And then we're going to need to bring in my handy dandy tea kettle. Okay, so first thing we want to do is we want to put a little bit of water in the bowl. We don't need very much. It should be hot because that'll make the sugar dissolve that much faster. So, how much sugar? That's probably a good start. You don't want a lot of water because you don't want to waste sugar. And then you take your whisk and you just stir it around until it seems to be dissolving fairly well. Still see a little sugar in the bottom. Okay, now let's put in a little bit more. This is not an exact science. The idea is just to get it stiff enough, or sugary enough, that it's going to make it nice and stiff. And the good news is, if you decide it's not quite stiff enough, you can just add more sugar. So, this is looking pretty good. Most of my sugar has dissolved, which means that it's fairly saturated with sugar. And we'll call that good. Okay, now your next step is going to be that you're going to take your piece of wax paper and you want to fold it in half. Doesn't really matter which way, lengthwise, crosswise, doesn't matter. Just as long as it's folded in half. Now, here comes the slightly tricky part. You want to fold this so that it's folded in thirds. So that'll take just a little fiddling and finagling until, there you go, it's folded in thirds. So now all you need to do is crease those. Okay, excellent. Now, sugar out of the way, and we want to lay our piece of wax paper down on our piece of cardboard. And if you have a box, that actually works as well or better because it gives more for your pins to grab into. So now we're going to take our snowflake. And remember, you want to have clean hands when you're doing this so that you're not getting anything on your snowflake. Okay, that's pretty good. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take our snowflake and roughly lay it out more or less the way we want it. And make sure that the center of the snowflake lines up with the center of your six-pointed star. And then, and this is where sometimes having a box works a little bit better, you just pull those points out as far as you can. And pin them right along the line on your wax paper. That's good to work opposite sides to opposite sides. That'll help you to keep it a little more the right shape. Now, yep, that's why a box works better. And oops, there we go. Okay, now my snowflake is a little ski-wumpus here, so that's easy to fix. What we're gonna do is I'm gonna pull it, kind of got off center here. So I'm going to pull this out a little further. You could draw a circle on your cardboard. Usually it doesn't need that. But if you're hyper precise, you can do that. I find that just pulling these out until it looks like those are, it's pretty circular. Now we have these picots, and stabbing these picots is going to help too, because we can help pull that out to the shape we want it, and then we can make adjustments. And this is a sticky proposition, so Just be aware, it's a messy process. Okay, so let's look at this and see if there's anywhere else that needs some tweaking. I think that looks a little ski-lump, so I'm going to go in here and just stick that right there. And do the same sort of thing around here, just to make it a little bit more consistent. And one more. Okay, let's see how that looks. Where do I have anything that I want to correct? Well, there's kind of this little thread down here that's hanging out. So let's see if we can scoot him over just a little bit so he doesn't fight so odd. And what do you think? I think this side needs a little bit more help. Okay, there we go. There's our snowflake. All we have to do is let it dry. And that's it, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. You can find a PDF of the full instructions for the snowflake on my website at silverriverarts.com. Please feel free to put any questions that you may have in the comments field down below, and I'd be tickled if you would take a picture of your finished snowflake and put it in the comments too. Here's a sneak peek of my next video, when I show you how I made this incredible replica of an 800-year-old Anasazi ring canteen, using wild clay I dug out of a Colorado hillside, and the same materials and techniques the ancient Puebloans used. As always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you'll know when my next video goes up. You can also jump on over to my blog at silverriverarts.com so you can see what else I've been up to. We'll see you next time.